coming up on Wrestling Life.
There's all these wrestlers that are there that are really big time, and Hulk picked this spot, and then he said, "Hey, brother, what are we doing tonight?" And then after all the boys stopped laughing, and I stopped laughing, and we're waiting for his next line, and then he says, "I'm serious, brother. It's your show tonight. I'm putting you over." He says, "How are we doing it?" So when I saw some kind of reality in his speech and his eyes, I was so, shocked. So I said, "Why don't you come in the ring and beat me up the whole match, and at the end, I'll just luckily small package you." And then he says, "Let's do it." He gave me half of the match. He made me shine. He made me dive. He made me this and that. And then he did the job for me at the end. And that's something that I will never forget.
This is Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that celebrates wrestling's past, present, and future with real talk from real talent.
Today, I'm so honored to be joined by a true legend of the Squared Circle. He's a former WWF Intercontinental Champion, Tag Team Champion, AWA Southern Heavyweight Champion, and he has a great story to share. From the glamorous tag team days of the fabulous Rougeau brothers to the Mountie to the Quebecers, my guest has seen the professional wrestling business change and evolve so much during his many decades in the industry. A very warm Wrestling Life welcome to my special guest is, of course, the one, the only, Mr. Jacques Rougeau. Jacques, how are you?
Hey, Ben, how are you?
Very well.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. You're someone I've been hoping to have on the show for a long time, so I'm grateful for your time, and I'm loving that you've dressed for the occasion as well.
Well, I'm looking forward to this one here because Sean Mooney talked a lot about you.
Sean's a great guy. So, look, I'll kick off firstly with, obviously, we're recording this just a handful of days after, the wrestling world has been completely rocked by the sudden passing of Hulk Hogan. And, I don't think anyone saw this coming, and the outpouring and the overwhelming outpouring of grief has been so much from fans worldwide. I know you and Terry were very close friends for a very long time. So I guess my first question is, how are you, and where were you when you heard the news?
Well, I'm doing better today, and it's been like 4 days now, something like that, and I'm better now. I was riding my motorcycle with my girlfriend, and my phone kept buzzing in my pocket, like and vibrating, and finally I pulled over, and I must have had 1,000 messages from, and it was like it was incredible because 2 days before that, I had talked to Nick, his son, which is in charge of the karaoke in Clearwater, this karaoke bar, and which I went a couple of times, and I actually sang there, had a great time last couple of years, and so I talked to Nick, and I asked Nick, and the first thing Nick told me, he says, "Jacques," he says, "Hulk's going to be so happy that you called." He says, "He's doing well." He said, it's a heart operation he had, but he's recuperating, and it's going the right way. It's going up. So that was 2 days before he died. And then, so the next day I went on my Facebook and I told everybody, "Hey, stop the fake news, everybody. Hulk's doing good," and gave a nice positive message that I just talked to Nick, and then the next day he died. So it's like, so it wasn't expected. And as everybody knows, it was a heart attack, but now everybody knows it wasn't nothing due to the operation. The operation had went well, but that's it. I guess his heart gave out, and whatever. So it was like it was such a shock because, well, let's just say when I got home from my motorcycle ride, I had so many messages from medias, and then people relate to me a lot with Hulk in Canada because I'm the only one who wrestled Hulk actually, and was the lucky one that actually he let me go over in my match. I beat Hulk Hogan in Quebec, so it's like so and everybody knew I was friends with him and stuff. So I had so much media that contacted me. So I answered. I always was close to the media in Quebec, and because they're the ones who brought me where I am, and so a lot of my media friends that helped me throughout my career reached out to me for some interviews. So I started doing 1, doing 2, doing 3, and next thing you know, I did about 48 hours nonstop media and interviews and TV, radio, newspapers. So what happened is there's a process that went on. So it was almost like going the 2 days following that was almost like going to a funeral, because when you go to a funeral, you're very sad when you get there, but then when everybody starts talking to you about the good times and the good things, and then finally in French we say it's fait ton deuil, like you grieve, like but then after that, it's the better things that come out. So it was a very fun process, and then the yesterday was the third day, where I stopped doing the media. I had 2 days of media, and then yesterday morning I went to the gym, and that's when it hit me. So I was working out, and I was working out. I was inspiring myself by Hulk, just working out so hard, and then I did a little video after, saying a message to Hulk. I have that on my Facebook if people want to go see it. My Facebook is public, so you can go see the message. It was just telling Hulk that I was working out for him, and I know that he's working out up there now, and he's still working out because he always was. And but it hit me bad yesterday, like only 3 days later. And last night, finally, my girlfriend and I, we went out dancing with some friends, and I needed to change the mood I was in. I'd like to try to turn the page a bit, and so it was fun just to change my mind after like 70 some hours of just Hulk, and grieving. And so today now here I am again going at Hulk again, but it's okay. It's all good because I owe that man my life, and I love that man to death. And as much as I could tell the people how great that man is, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and obviously I couldn't really kick off a conversation with you without talking about it first, because I know how close you were. And of course, you did have that match, as you said, at the Molson Centre in 1997, where you actually were one of very, very few people to beat Hollywood Hogan. I think it was only really you, Goldberg, Lex Luger, probably, from that period of time. Roddy Piper. I'm trying to think. There were very few, weren't there, that got a chance?
I know they say you could count them on a hand. So
yeah.
I know there's not too many. It was amazing how lucky I was, and but he had a lot of respect for our family, and I contribute this match that he gave me to 2 or 3 reasons. If I try to sum them all together, I know for a fact that through Jimmy Hart, who, for those who don't know yet, Jimmy Hart, well, as you can see on my shirt, he was my manager as the fabulous Rougeau brothers. He was also my manager as the Mountie, which so we grew really, really close, me and Jimmy, because we were very much alike, and we didn't go out in bars. We were very serious, always well dressed, always answering to the fans, always professional. And but Jimmy Hart, he was also Hulk's real manager in life. He was the one booking his stuffs in life, his Comic-Cons and shows and his appearances, and taking care of the karaoke. And so we had this great relationship. And through Jimmy, he let me know how much he had respect for the Rougeau family. And I remember on one given night, I should have listened more, but Hulk told me on one given night, I was with Raymond in the dressing room, and we were on the first match that night, and there was like 20,000 people. And Hulk came to see us, and we had a hell of a match. We were against the Hart Foundation, and then we had a hell of a match. And it was the first match of the night. And because I think the guys were late or something, so anyway, they put us on first. And so we went out there, and Hulk came to see me, and he said, me and Raymond, and then he said, guy, he says, I want to tell you something. He says, he says, a lot of people in this business think that the most important match of the evening is the main event, my match. But he says it's not. He says the most important match is the first match. Because if you start the crowd on the right foot and you don't insult their intelligence, and you really get them into the show, then everything just thrives. Like it just goes on. And he told me that. And for many years, I worked with Hulk for 10 years, and then like 25 days a month. So I could tell you that he's seen the hard work that we've put in. So I knew he had a lot of respect for the Rougeau family. that was one reason why I think he put me over in Montreal. And another reason why, it's a more delicate situation, but it's what happened with Davey the Dynamite Kid and the British Bulldog, with my intimidation and bullying that I received from him, and then I threatened to go bring it to Vince, and then he beat me up in the dressing room, and I think everybody knows the story, and it was the biggest beating I ever got in my life, the most insulting one, and my self-esteem had fell down to nothing, and no, I still wonder today how come I didn't quit, how come I didn't leave, but anyway. So I hung in there. I put one foot in front of the other, and then the next week after, I did what I had to do, and I made a comeback on Dynamite, and then 2 weeks after that, Dynamite quit the business. He just literally quit the WWF, and Hulk. What people don't know is Hulk had a lot of friends that were bullied before me. And they quit the business, and they left the business, and their gear was. I could tell you some stories about Honky Tonk Man being on his knees in the dressing room in front of the Dynamite Kid, insulting him and over a girl, a fan, and he just bullied him and that. And then Honky was a good friend of Hulk's, and so Hulk lost a lot of friends in this battle against bullying and stuff. And even Hulk, I'm sure he never told me. But I'm sure he was afraid, too, of the Bulldogs, that they were going to start to rib him, too. Because, they were ribbing everybody. They were out of control. They were on drugs, on steroids, on pills. They were gone out of this world. And they were just, and Dynamite, I don't want to get on his case too much, because I have so much respect for them as wrestlers, but he had that small man complex. And so he had to try to prove that he was bigger, better than life. And, so I think that when they left, they quit the business because of me doing what I did to him. I think Hulk gained a big respect in me, and there was like a relief of this terror in the dressing room, that all the boys were afraid of the Bulldogs, because they were afraid to fall into the next victims. And a lot of the boys, I know for a fact, were well, let's just put it this way: the Bulldogs would play a rib on someone, and then all the other boys would laugh with the Bulldogs when they do it, because as long as they were laughing with the Bulldogs, they weren't a victim. So they weren't picked on us, because when the Bulldogs figured oh, you're on my side, then I'll take her, you mate, but it's hard to face bullying. And so I think that Hulk gained a lot of respect from me, and when I did that, and so when we came to Montreal, it was the funniest thing on earth. And the thing that I look back today and I wonder how things happen in life. We're in the dressing room, and the night of the show, and I'm just waiting. I'm just so nervous. I've always been nervous being in the same room as Hulk. He was so just intimidating. He was just so big, so iconic. I imagine the hockey players going in the dressing room with Wayne Gretzky and with Mario Lemieux just sitting beside them, the young guys that come in and oh my God, they're just being. And I always had that feeling when I was around Hulk, wow, he's so big and so impressive and so nice and so kind. So anyway, so in the dressing room in the Molson Center, it's my show. I booked this show for WCW. I'm the promoter for this show. And he comes in, and out of nowhere, there's Lex Luger's there. There's a Harlem Heat, Ric Flair, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero. I could go on. The Giant, Paul White. There's all these wrestlers that are there that are really big time. And out of nowhere, there's a silence that comes in the ring, and then Hulk picked this spot, and then he said, "Hey, brother, what are we doing tonight?" He says that to me, what are we doing tonight? And I started laughing so hard because, and everybody, all the boys started laughing too, because, the boys probably thought he was just testing me, to see how I would respond to it. And I was laughing because I thought it was so stupid for him to say that. I was just waiting for him to do the leg drop on me and tell me when he's going to do it. I was just so happy to be in the ring with him, that he accepted it. And then after all the boys stopped laughing and I stopped laughing, and we're waiting for his next line, and then he says, "I'm serious, brother. It's your show tonight." He says, "What are we doing?" So now everybody's getting serious in the dressing room, and I'm starting to feel unease, so I tell him, I said, "You're very funny, Hulk. You're very, very funny." And then he says, "I'm serious, brother." He says, "It's your show tonight. I'm putting you over." He says, "How are we doing it?" So when I saw some kind of reality in his speech and his eyes, I was so I don't know, shocked. So I told him, I said, why don't you come in the ring and beat me up the whole match as much as you can, and at the end I'll just luckily small package you, and then he says, let's do it. So that stayed like that. So then when we got into the ring, he gave me half of the match. He made me shine, he made me dive, he made me this and that, and then he did the job for me at the end. And it was so amazing because when I got back in the dressing room, none of the boys were there. They were all gone. There was nobody in the dressing room left. I guess they didn't want to see it or didn't believe it, or it was too hard for them to face that. Or we got back in the dressing room, we were alone, me and Hulk. And that's something that I will never forget. Since that day, my notoriety just went like that. And through all they tried to keep it secret for a lot of times, but finally it leaked out to the medias, and then over the years, people are talking more and more about it. And I'm the first one I never do a podcast or a show without saying that, hey, I'm the only Canadian to beat Hulk Hogan, and because I got my bragging rights here.
Absolutely.
So that was a magical moment.
He's someone I wish that I could have had a chance to have on this show. I've had a lot of conversations with my friend Mark Mero, who I worked on Mark's book with him, and when I was writing Mark's autobiography with him, we talked a lot about Hulk. Hulk did a lot to help Mark, especially after wrestling, with anti-bullying programs and for work he was doing with young people. So I've heard a lot of stories about the real Terry Bollea away from the Hulk Hogan character, and he's someone I hope to speak to for a long time.
I'll tell you a good story too that people don't know, just to show another side of Hulk. We're doing a double shot one day. We're in Philadelphia in the afternoon, and we're in Chicago that night. It's a Sunday. We're working twice that day. So the show starts at 1. At 4 o'clock, we got to rush to the airport. There's 2 private planes, one his and the other one for the boys, and we're flying to Chicago. But we were so close on time and tight on time, so we got to the airport, jumped in the plane, and just before taking off, Terry shows up. And he comes in through the door, and he's got 2 big handfuls of sandwiches. And he brings us all a bunch of sandwiches. He says, hey, guys, he says, you won't have time to eat. So he says, take this. And he brought the sandwiches. And I looked at that guy from that day on, and I said, no matter what happens from this day on, this superstar, this mega superstar, takes the time to think about his people that are underneath card, and that was so thoughtful of him. And that was a side of Hulk that not everybody knows.
Title Run Toys Series 1. Dangerous Danny Davis. Wrath. Juventud Guerrera. Ernest the Cat Miller. And Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Coming to the ring soon.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to pick up on something you said about what he said to you about the opening match being as important as the main event, because it wasn't long ago. Obviously, I'm recording from the UK. I became a fan of professional wrestling in 1992. And I've recently had Bushwhacker Luke was on this show, and we talked about how you guys obviously opened up SummerSlam 1992, yourself, the Bushwhackers, the Nasty Boys, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and you had the honour of that wild 6-man match was the first match. And Luke was saying to me about how you didn't really have to do you didn't have to do much in that match. Like the audience were just so ready for you. What was it like performing in front of 80,000 British fans?
That was in Wembley, right?
Wembley Stadium.
That was in Wembley.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Bushwhackers against the Nasty Boys and me, right?
Yeah,
that it?
That's
the
right.
Mountie?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember. And yeah, but in those days, how can I say that? It was the best era of wrestling in the 80s, and the best era. And we had this motto: less is more. Like today they're going 1,000 miles an hour, doing 1,000 things that mean nothing. In our days, we'd the guy would run into the Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I'd shoot him off in the ropes, and he'd give me a tackle, just a simple tackle. and I'd take a crazy bump to the floor, and I'd be like, oh my God. And then I'd roll out of the ring, and I'd go in Jimmy Hart's arms, and I'd hug him and get some comfort. And the guys on the outside are going, hey, and then you have the nasty boys are going, hey, what's that? And then jumping. We did one move, but we did so much interaction with the crowd that we had time for the crowd to be part of us. We brought a lot of empathy in our wrestling those days. Yeah, a chance for the crowd to feel how we feel. It wasn't going too fast, and so yeah. And I remember having matches like some matches that were incredible. We had some marathon matches with Raymond and I against the Rockers, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, and we did 1 hour matches, and it's like the ones who win the most fall, but 7, 8, 10 minutes were gone in the match, and we never touched yet. Like, I'm going to give you an example. This is amazing how less is more. So we get in the ring, me and Shawn, we're face to face, and we go to lock up. And as we go to lock up, I said, whoa, wait a minute, back him up, ref, back him up. And then they'd back him up. And then I just lay down on the ground, and I do a nip up, what you call, just land back on my feet, straight from my back. And then I'd look at the crowd like, huh? How's that? And then I'd look at Shawn and say, why don't you try it, big boy? And then he'd look at me, hey, let's wrestle. I said, no, come. And then I'd lay back on the ground again. I'd do another one to show him, what? Are you afraid? I'd do the chicken thing. I said, come on, you try that. So finally he'd look at the crowd, and the crowd would be right behind him already going like, come on, Shawn, come on. So Shawn would go down and he'd do it. And 20,000 people, when he did it, would pop like, yeah, okay, let's go. So now we start. So now we turn in the ring, turning face to face. I go to lock up with him, but I go underneath him. I duck underneath, and I said, wait a minute. So I get out of the ring. I get on the apron. I put my hands on the rope, and then I flip over the top rope, and I land on my feet. And that's an acrobatic move. And then I go like this, and how about that one? You think you're so good. How about that one? And so then he'd go like, come on, ref, let's do the wrestling. And then I'd go, chicken. And the 20,000 people would be booing me like really bad. Yeah. And then I'd say, come on. So finally, he'd get out of the ring, and he'd put his hands on the ropes, and then he'd do a flip. And then when he did the flip, land on his feet, simple flip, 20,000 people are on their feet cheering, like, yeah. So now we turn around like we're going to finally make our first contact. Yeah. And then we go to lock up. Then he ducks underneath me. So I go straight through. I miss him. And then he goes, wait a minute. So he climbs up 1, 2, 3 ropes. He gets on the top rope. And then there's a full back flip in the air from the top rope and lands in the middle of the ring. And then he looks at me and he goes like, why don't you try that? And people went nuts. Like, people were going nuts. And I was like, and I'm looking at Raymond like, and then Raymond's like, don't do it. I'm going like, I could do it, Ray. I could do it. So then I start climbing up the rope, shaking. My feet are shaking, going up second, third rope, second rope, third rope, second rope. Not sure I'm going to do it. And then finally I just jump down, and then the people would roar, like, and then we'd start the match. But 10 minutes was gone in the match. We never touched. No, and we had the people, when you had the people on their feet.
And that was the wrestling I grew up on. That was the World Wrestling Federation for me, early 90s. That was what I was used to, and that's what I absolutely loved. And it's that kind of very slow-paced storytelling, isn't it, where you get really, really involved with the characters and their facial expressions, and
the interaction with the crowd was amazing. Yeah. And another thing too, in those days, you got to remember, another thing that was amazing in those days. And if I'm pulling out my bragging rights here, I'm going to try not to do it too much. but I'll tell you, we are recognized, Raymond and I, as one by Jimmy Hart and by many, the best heel team ever for getting heat behind the referee's back. Like, we didn't go for the cheap heat. Like, go to the person that was overweight beside the ring and say, you fatso, and then get the people boo. That wasn't our kind of heat. Our kind of heat was something where we're working as a team. Example, I had Bret Hart down, and we were against Anvil Neidhart, Bret Hart, me and Raymond, and I had Bret Hart we're working on him, and then finally we're getting him some good steam on him, and we're really hurting him bad. And then at one point, Raymond would have a hold on Bret, let's say, and Bret would start crawling towards his corner like he wants to tag Anvil, and then next thing you know, I'd run into the ring.
Yeah.
But when I run into the ring, I'd scream, "Hey, hey, hey, hey!" So the referee would see me, so he'd turn around and he'd come and push me out. But when he'd push me out, Bret would tag Anvil in that time. And then when I'd say, okay, I'm getting out. So as soon as I'd get out, the referee turned around, and then he'd go stop Anvil.
Yeah.
So because Anvil, they didn't see the tag, so he'd push Anvil out. But in the meantime, me and Raymond switched illegally and then did a double move at the same time. And then when the referee turned around, I'd have a move on Bret. And then the referee would turn around like, "Hey, you weren't the legal guy." And then I'd look at the people, I'd say, "That's the people we tagged. That's the people we tagged." And we did things. All the heat we did was behind the referee's back. So we didn't put the heat on the referee. We put the heat on us. Like, we were smart, not the referee was dumb. And that's what we were known for, that kind of heat. So we had some very, very serious heat as heels, Raymond and I, and as a tag team. And it was fun working with all those great workers.
And did you always prefer being a heel to being a babyface?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I always enjoyed being a babyface in my younger career, because I was a hero in Quebec, and I was in little territories where I was going at, I was getting over. But when I got to the WWF, they'd seen so many good talent and so many big, and the Americans are so patriotic. They are so patriotic. So as soon as they announced, like, the heel team would come in, they'd boo them. And then as soon as they announced, from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, the people right then are like, so for the people who knew us, finally got to know me and Raymond for 2 years as babyface, they had enough respect to not really boo us, but they weren't into us. And many were haters. Like, they'd still boo us, even if we were the good guys. So we had to go in, and we worked like we worked, and we build every match. And by the end of every match, then we became heroes. But it was a constant battle every time we came out. We never had it won ahead of time. We always had to go win it night after night to show them that we're good guys, that we don't cheat, we work hard, and then finally at the end they appreciate us. But we were never the type, me and Raymond as babyface, that's been, "Oh yeah, here they come." No, it was never that. It was, "Oh, there's the Rougeaus," but when we turned heel, man, what a party for us. Then it reversed. Everything reversed. It was so easy for us to insult the Americans because it came from the heart. And I hated the fans so much because they gave us a hard time as baby faces. Yeah. So when we came in with those little American flags, say, "Hi, I'm Jacques, and I'm Raymond. We're the Fabulous Rougeau brothers. And I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving," when it was Memorial Weekend. "I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving." And then people would say, "You dumb," and we'd insult them really bad. But always working too, as like the way I was telling you, behind the referee's back, and so it was it was a lot more fun, even as the Mountie. Had so much fun working as the Mountie as a heel. It was a different kind of heel. I was a heel more like I was in singles, so it was more like I had to be more aggressive and with my shock stick, and that was fun. But I still had Jimmy Hart, and I still showed my little cowardly side there, or my little wimpy side of me there with Jimmy. When I'd get beat up, I'd go into his arms, and so I had that character. But I always enjoyed, especially when I did those vignettes. I don't know if you remember the vignettes when I came in.
Very well, yeah. I loved the Mountie.
There's one vignette there that was absolutely crazy. People wanted to kill me, like in Boston, Philadelphia, New York. When we got there the first time, I showed up after my vignettes. They were throwing rocks at me. It was bad. I had a police escort to bring me to the buildings because when I'd get the buildings, people really wanted to attack me. Well, because I did that vignette, the one with the horse. I don't know if you remember the one with the horse, where I'm sitting on the horse, and there's two Americans that pull up, and they're in the car, and I say, excuse me, officer. They were in Canada. They were looking to go back to the United States. They were lost. So he said, "Excuse me, officer." And I looked down at him from my horse and says, "I'm not an officer, I'm the Mountie." So then the guy would like, "Oh my God." And then he said, "Well, excuse me, Mr. Mountie, can you tell me how to get back to the U.S.? I'm lost." So then I'd get off my horse, really arrogantly looking at the camera, getting off my horse. And then I'd tell the guy, "Come here." So the guy gets out of his car, very nervous. And then I bring him to the front of my horse. And then I put my hand underneath the horse's mouth like this. And I put it up like this. I look at the guy, I said, "You see that part of my horse?" It always points to Canada. Now come here. And then I brought him to the rear end of my horse, and then I'd lift the tail up completely, and the camera was right in the arse. And then I'd say, you see this part of my horse? It always points to the United States. And then the guy would look at and then jump in his car and leave. So, but that for me was the funniest thing ever. But for the Americans, I'll tell you what, that didn't go very well. They didn't take that very well, I'll tell you. So when I got it into the States, you know, as the Mountie, I had a lot of heat.
Wow. And was it kind of scary heat? You hear sometimes about heat being actually like that next level, where actually it's.
No, I loved it. I loved it. I wasn't afraid of it. I loved it. I how can I say that? I thrived that actually, because I knew I was always in my own mind. It was never going to go down to being stabbed or being killed but I knew I drew the line between, like, you know, the different kind of heat as the Fabulous Rougeau brothers, while I was nerds. This one was more like, it was like hitting them really bad. They're on their ego, the Americans, and it was a different kind of heat, a different, more serious. But that final match with Big Boss Man in Madison Square Gardens, with the jailhouse match,
some 91,
that was epic. You know, I go in Comic-Cons these days today, and I'm around the world now with Comic-Cons, and one of the first things people say is like, hey, man, that match, you know, when you went to jail, it was so funny. It was just so funny.
Yeah, and just it's so iconic of that era as well. I mean, I've got you'll see up there, I've got my Mountie up there next to the Hulkster. I've got my little Mountie Hasbro. I absolutely loved the Mountie, and you know, for me, like, I've got my Intercontinental Championship, which is I still think is the most beautiful wrestling belt that's ever been created. But for me, even though you only held that belt for 2 days, I still think of the Mountie as a really key champion from that golden era of wrestling.
It's so funny, Ben, that you're saying that, because in every Comic-Con I go, everywhere I go, everybody that comes with pictures, I have the belt. My figurines, I have the belt.
Yeah.
And everybody talks to me about the Intercontinental Championship, that I beat Bret the Hitman Hart, and then Rowdy Piper with the anti-shock vest that he had on. You know, and I think in those days, looking back, I think the belt meant something. It was like, it meant something, because I only had it for 2 days. But everybody, when I go to Comic-Cons, they have pictures of me with the belt, and they all refer to me as the Intercontinental Champion. And I always tell them, I said, I put them back in the place every time. I said, hey guys, I said, because some people come up to me and say, hey Jacques, you were the greatest Intercontinental. I say, hey, listen, I was the greatest for 2 days. I was the shortest lived Intercontinental Champion that ever existed.
I mean, did you know going in? Obviously, you beat Bret. My understanding, and correct me if this is wrong, I believe Bret was in potential discussions around his contract at the time. So you beat Bret for the title. Did you know that you're there literally as to act as a transition between Bret and Roddy?
No, that had nothing to do with his contract. That had something to do with him not wanting to drop it to Piper.
Oh, okay.
And then, so I was the guinea pig there between both of them. Like, you know, just instead of dropping it to Piper, and I'm not, you know, I don't have 100% proof of what I'm saying, but I'm just, I was around it, you know, so I could hear the hearsays and the wheeze and the no's and so I honestly think Bret didn't want to drop the title to Piper, so he'd rather drop it to me. But, you know, I got to tell you something about Bret. Bret, he was the greatest guy to work with, but he was the hardest guy to work with. In other words, he never wanted to do favors for people. He even when I won the Intercontinental Championship, he had the announcer announce that he had 104 fever before he started the match. He had 104 fever, and that the doctor recommended that he didn't wrestle that night. So when I went in, I beat him. I beat a sick guy. I beat so I used to despise Bret for that, and then in time I realized that he was smart. Like, you know, he was smart to do that, because I realized after my altercations with Vince and everything else, I'm starting to say that maybe he's the smart one and I'm not, you know. But I always thought being a yes man, you know, always saying yes to Vince, yes, that we'd get to the top. And but now I'm starting to realize that no, sometimes I think that he had the right way of doing it, and but as far as working with Bret,
got to protect yourself, I guess, haven't you, like in this industry?
But we had so much trust, for Vince. When we got there, we just believed in him. And like he said, us the first meeting we had in New York, I asked him, what are your plans for us? He said, the sky's the limit. And then I found out by 10 other guys that they had the same line told to them too, the sky's the limit. And then so it wasn't special for us. It was his line that he'd tell everybody. So no, but in a personal life, me and Bret are like this. Like, I always loved the guy. I started wrestling for his dad in 1977 in Stampede Wrestling. Amazing. He was driving the bus. Bret wasn't even a wrestler, and he was putting up the ring, when I was wrestling for his dad. And we always got along really good. He was always so funny in the dressing room, so nice. And he was a nice person, Bret. I up till this day I love him, except for the business side of it, being so hard, to get a win over him when we're all working together, anyway. So I think the bottom line is, I personally think that Bret didn't want to drop the belt to Piper, so he passed by me and passed it to Piper. A lot of people feel that the Mountie could have had a longer run. But I had a problem with here's something else that not everybody knows, but the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the real Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they took an injunction against WWF to ban me from TV.
Wow.
Because I was giving them a bad image. But that's because I was doing my job, so that when that happened, the WWF making TV tapings in the States, they were making one TV taping, and then they were sending it around the world with different voiceovers for Canal Plus and for England, for Japan, but it was all the same show they were sending out. So me being banned on TV in Canada, they would have had to do a special show just for me. So that kind of gave me the shot there that really stopped my gimmick from moving on. But that character, I'll tell you, the Mountie with the shock stick, was just absolutely amazing. And people that I meet today, they remember me every time. And it's so funny because when I go to Comic Cons, again, I'm referring to that because that's what I do these days. But when I go on Comic Cons, nothing personal with anybody, but I'm not giving a shot to anybody. But a lot of the guys, they come, they're sitting down in sweatsuits, and they have pictures of them, and then you recognize them. Me, when I go to Comic Cons, I'm dressed with my gear.
You look
I got
fantastic,
my shot stick, and I got my gear on. So when you have tables from different places around in the big Coliseum in different places, you could be a mile away. And you could look at the other end and, hey, look, the Mountie's over there. Yeah. They recognize me because of my hat, my glasses, my stick, and I'm always standing up. I never sit down. When I go to Comic Cons for 3-4 hours, I'm always standing up. And then when someone comes to get a picture with me, I said, you want a funny picture or a straight picture? They say, oh, funny picture. So I grab them by the hair, I put my shock stick in front of them, and then I tell them, put your hands up like this, put your hands up like this, and then I go like, and then so I interact with the fans a lot. I do that for 4 hours. So it's amazing. Like so it's fun. But I still have a lot of fun with my fans.
Oh, one day me and you need a photo together. I need a Mountie photo on my wall. Absolutely.
If you don't mind to be shocked, it's okay.
That's fine.
I'm Mark Merrill, former WWE Intercontinental Wrestling Champion and 3-time WCW World Television Champion. I am thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Bad to Good. The inspiring story of a wrestling wild man chronicles the highs and lows of my life, both in and out of the wrestling ring. It's a powerful narrative of overcoming adversity and the importance of perseverance, no matter how tough the journey gets. Co-authored with my good friend and award-winning journalist, Ben Veal, this is a story I've long wanted to share, and I truly hope it inspires you. I hold nothing back in this book, revealing the untold truths of my extraordinary life, from my modest beginnings and my first boxing match to the struggles with addiction that almost consumed me and my evolution into the charismatic Johnny B. Bad. This book offers an insider's perspective on the world of professional wrestling and my journey as a sports entertainer. You'll read about my pivotal negotiations with Vince McMahon that led to the first ever guaranteed contract in the WWF and how that decision marked me within the locker room. I discuss the impact of my relationship with my then wife, Rena, known to fans as Sable, on my career. I also confront the darkest moments of my life, how I hit rock bottom and how that experience sparked my rebirth, leading me to become America's leading motivational school speaker, inspiring young people and transforming lives. Featuring forwards by my good friends Diamond Dallas Page and Lex Luger, along with contributions from Mick Foley, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, and others who shared this wild journey with me. Bad to Good is a story you don't want to miss. Head to Amazon.com or WrestlingLife.online now to pick up your copy.
There's so much I want to ask you, and we'll have to do a part 2 because there's 1,000,001 questions today. But the reason that I reached out to Sean Mooney, who very kindly introduced us, was because I'd seen a news story. So before you were doing all of the Hulk Hogan tribute pieces, you were on the news recently talking about actually the last few years and how hard they've been for you and for your family and for your wrestling school. So before we wrap up for today, Jacques, I wonder if you could kind of take my audience through what's been going on in your life in the last few years.
Sure. But it's more like the last 4 years than the last 2 years.
Yeah.
A lot of people think they're untouchable. I was one of those. And then the COVID happened. And, we all reinvent ourselves. And I reinvented myself in stand-up comic shows. So I do stand-up comedies about my wrestling career. So I go with my girlfriend. She's on the laptop and she in the giant screen. She puts pictures and I tell stories of all the behind the scenes and stuff like that about my career. And I bring back the good old memories. And then I have a big crash mat at the end where I go get people in the stands and I bring them up without them knowing it. And I give them suplexes, power bombs, and I have fun. I have a great one-man show that I've been doing for many years. So I after doing that for like 3-4 years, then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, they I don't know how it was in your area, but they closed all the venues down.
Yep.
Like, you couldn't do any more shows. And wrestlers don't have insurance. And I always said to my dad, who was telling me, save your money when you're nice. I said, don't worry, Dad, I'm going to make money all my life. I'm not worried about that. Then, I was always a guy. I wasn't poor, but wasn't rich. I was always living day by day, week by week, and making ends meet. And when COVID hit, no more tickets. I couldn't sell any more tickets. I couldn't do any more shows. So the government reached out to us. I don't know how it was in your area, but they offered to give us $40,000 a loan, just that for here, we'll give you this, and you could pay back later. And things were so dark mentally, because even at 11 o'clock at night, you couldn't leave your home anymore.
Yeah.
It was like there was a curfew. We got really scared. I got really paranoid, like, hey, the end of the world is coming, to be honest with you. So I grabbed that 40,000, sure. And then, so that lasted a couple of years. And then after that, after a year after that, I started doing shows again and start paying the money that I need to pay to some friends and family because like I said, I didn't have any income and I still had the debt of the 40,000 to the government. And then next thing you know, my girlfriend of 13 years, she got cancer. So, and anybody who's lived through cancer, you hear about it and you read about it, but until you live it, you don't know what the hell you're going through because and not even you, your partner of life. The cancer is bad, but the chemotherapy is worse. The collateral damage that the chemotherapy does to a person, you have no idea. She was doing treatments for 16 months and every week, and she was 3 days a week at the hospital. And those other 3 days, 2 days that you could go to work, you don't want to leave her because she's at home and you wake up in the morning and then she's like, well, I got my head is killing me. You don't want to leave your girlfriend there like that, and go work. So I put my work aside and I just took care of my lady. So I fell back in the hole again. And then for 2 years like that. And then after that, I did Wrestling Academy. I did 3 years of Wrestling Academy, which is a contest through Canada where you fly. I was flying in the talent from all over Canada, and I had judges by the ring. It was almost like Americans Got Talent or something, or The Voice, or the judges were real, and I would put on Zoom matches together with wrestlers 1 month before their appearance in Montreal, and then I'd help them put a match together, make sure that it was equally done, the match, that everybody looked good, and then when they come to Montreal, they perform in front of the judges, and then they're going to the next level from quarterfinals to semifinals to finals, and the 4 winners would win $10,000 each, 2 men and 2 women. Wow. So it was a competition that cost $100,000, but out of that, I did it for 3 years, and my girlfriend was sick and a little bit through there, but we still managed to do it. And but I lost $15,000 the first year, I lost $15,000 the second year, and I lost $20,000 last year because a couple of my sponsors went bankrupt and they never paid me for the prizes. So I didn't want to lose face. So I borrowed the money, and I said, I put my credit card and I paid the wrestlers because I didn't want the word to get out like Jacques Rougeau is not paying his winners. So I kept my name clean and all that. But now it was down like $70,000. So just about last week, my company that I had for 40-some years, I went bankrupt last week. And then I did that because for me, there's like, I just turned 65 years old now, and I got my old man's pension now, and that company was a numbered company. It wasn't like impersonal. And in my bankruptcy, I never put anybody in my bankruptcy. Like I never, excuse my language, but I never screwed anybody over. I didn't put them in there. Like, I'm not paying you. So I the little bit of debts that I had left, I'm paying people. Now I started doing one-man shows again. Now I'm paying my people. My credit card, I'm still paying my credit card. I never put my credit card in my debt. I just put the government, the $70,000 that my company was behind, that I, it's been a roller coaster kind of way of life there. But the lesson in this is very simple. Like, first of all, save your money when you can, because you may need it one day. But the other one is much more important. The advice that I'm going to give people is, if you don't do it, it's okay. If you fight day by day like I did all my life, it's okay. The most important thing is, everybody falls in life, but the most important thing is to get back up. And to, if you fall, get up. And just keep fighting and keep pushing, and good things are going to come to you. And it was so funny because when I called my bankruptcy about let's say 3 weeks ago, approximately, I talked to the syndication, and I told the lady, I said, I don't want Jacques Rougeau to go bankrupt. Now it's just my numbered company. I'm not putting anybody in my debts. I don't want to hurt anybody with my bankruptcy. I just want to get this debt off my shoulder. I can't breathe anymore. It's like this. And I said, but I want to make sure that Jacques Rougeau's name is not in there. And she says, don't worry, it's a number. It's not going to show anywhere. So I'm sitting at home about 2 weeks ago, and then the phone rings, and it's the biggest newspaper in Montreal. Hey, Mr. Rougeau, we're sorry to hear, about you, because the media love me in Montreal. So they approached me like, Mr. Rougeau, we'd like to get your comments on your bankruptcy. And I'm going, and I died when I got that phone call. They're going public with it. And I was like, so I said, listen, I said, can I, you can't do that. I said, it's a number. You can't bring my name. He said, sorry, Jacques, it's my big boss at the paper. He wants me to do a paper, but he wants me at least to get your version, your side of the story, if you want to give it to. If not, I'm going to print it anyway tomorrow. So I said, okay. I said, just give me an hour, okay? I need to talk to someone. He said, okay, no problem. So I called my syndication, and the woman that got me, that made the deal. I said, hey, you told me that it wasn't going to go public, that it wasn't my name. And she says, the Journal de Montréal just called me too. And she was like, but they have a lot of investigators when there's bankruptcies and stuff like that they go see who the people are behind the bankruptcies and all that. So I called the newspaper guy back. I said, okay, you got me. But I said, you know what? I said, it's important for me, one thing, that you tell everybody in this bankruptcy, that I'm not putting any company, any personal friend or anything. I'm paying my credit card. It's just the government that when the COVID came and they offered me the $40,000, and I panicked, I shouldn't have took it. but I had no income, I had no insurance, and I was afraid. And so I explained, and I did every media in Quebec. They all called me after that, and but you know what? They all picked me up from the ground, and they lift me up in the articles and everything. They were saying, Jacques, you're not the only one who went bankrupt because of COVID, believe me. And it's great, and you're very honorable in what you're doing, and you're just a normal human being, and I'm sure things are going to get better, and I'm sure. So everybody got behind me in the media. So finally, I didn't lose face, which I was afraid of, because the Rougeau name is so important to me and our heritage. And so it went by okay. So now I'm doing really good. I got next week I'm going to start selling my tickets again. I got 3 shows coming up, and things are really looking good. So I'm back. The weight's off my shoulder now of that debt I had, and I'm starting over.
And how can my audience support you? Go for more information, find out more about your shows and what you're doing now.
You could follow me on Jacques Rougeau on Facebook. A picture of me and my girlfriend. Financially, I don't want nothing. I'll take care of myself. Thank you very much. Your support is nice with your words and care, and then that's always nice. And good wishes to my girl. That's 5 months. She's 5 months now. She's been in remission. I don't know if you say that word in English. Remission.
Remission.
Yeah. After 5 months of she rang the bell at the cancer thing there. After 16 months of battle. So just a little bit of support like that is fine. And that's about it. That's all I could say.
That must be a better sound than any bell you ever heard in a wrestling ring.
Yes, definitely. And still now, she we go to the hospital like maybe once every 2-3 weeks. We go past tests, and she gets a little bit of pains here and there, because through her chemotherapy, talking about collateral damage, she lost her thyroid glands. The thyroid glands, they stopped working. The chemotherapy killed it. So now she's like, that's where she's having all the headaches still, and the things so there's still some damage that thing did. But and I'll tell you one last thing. It's just so funny. I got to tell you this. Before she started the treatment of chemotherapy, when they announced us, we fell into a shock when she have cancer, breast cancer, and it's like, but the first thing that came to my mind was like, cancer, she's gonna shrink. Like, she's going to become really skinny and stuff. So before she started her chemo, like 3 weeks before, I had her eating chocolate ice creams, and I put some weight on, like, just
feed her up.
So she like a bear. And then so here's the thing. She starts her chemotherapy, and they start giving her cortisone,
mm-hmm.
and cortisone, it just makes you put weight on. So the whole time she was doing cortisone, so now she's into this chemotherapy for about a month, 2 months, and she's still gaining weight. And then finally she starts to bring it to their attention, like, hey, am I not supposed to lose weight? And they say, no, with the cortisone, you're going to put some weight. You could put weight on. So she put on about 40 pounds, and she's not too tall. So, so it was so funny, because I tried to get her fat before she started. So now, anyway, long story short is we went last week for an exam and about her thyroid glands, and they gave us hope. They said there is a possibility that if you lose 20 or 30 pounds, if you lose weight, that your glands are going to start working again. So now she hasn't eaten a week now, but she said, but it's funny that how sometimes you have a look on something, and it's not at all what it's going to be.
No.
But, so anyway, I want to send a message to all the people that are dealing with cancer right now, that please support your loved ones. It's so important that you're there. You have no idea. She loves me so much, my girl, now. Like, I won her heart for the rest of my days, because I was there for 2 years with her and support her, and that's worth more than any money at all and anything else. And so support the people that are there, but tell them that today they're so advanced that they're going to make it through. Just they must believe, because technology has proven to us that you're going to make it through. And so good luck anybody that has cancer right now.
Well, I don't think I could end it better than that, to be honest, Jacques. I think that is the single best way to end this episode. So all I'm going to say to wrap up for our time today is thank you to you, because this has been genuinely such a wonderful conversation, and I hope we can do it again, because we haven't even touched half of the questions I had planned. So anytime you can make the time, let's do another one of these. And a thank you to my producer Jeff Easton from Tall Lake Productions, who will do a wonderful job with this edit as he always does. Thank you to my audience for joining me and Jacques today, but most of all, just thank you for a brilliant conversation, Jacques. I've really enjoyed it today.
Well, thank you, Ben. It was really fun. For the little talk I did all the talking, but for the little bit you talked, thank you so much, and thank you for giving me the possibility to talk to my fans again. It's always nice, and thanks Sean Mooney for introducing me to you. I love Sean; he's a great guy, and so hopefully we'll have part 2.
Yeah, well, you and Sean both very loved by us fans in the UK.
I appreciate that very much, and I had a great time at the Love of Wrestling last Christmas. I went down there in February, I think. So I had such a great time. I also want to shout out to Sarah Page. I don't know if you know Sarah Page. She's a bodybuilder. She looks like China.
Yeah.
I want to shout out to her because I met her and she was just awesome.
Yeah, she's incredible. She is incredible. Yeah. Right, I'm going to wrap up for today. This has been Ben Veal. This has been Wrestling Life. My very special guest always gets his man. He is, of course, the Mountie Jacques Rougeau. We'll be back soon for more real talk from real talent. Until then, be good to each other. Pay it forward if you can. See you soon. Bye.